Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to continue our conversations about kind of the future of health and all of the connections that are necessary to make our bodies thrive. And I am really excited to have Lauren Ohayon with us today. I'm a huge fan of her work, and she has really been someone who's kind of opened my eyes to the connections that exist between systems and between body parts in our own bodies. Believe it or not, in Western medicine, a lot of times the way we make learning about the body manageable is by breaking it into systems. And then sometimes it's hard to go back and put it back together as the whole afterwards. And so I came to Lauren's work initially through a program called One Strong Mama that helps prepare women's bodies to give birth and found it amazing. I think I was 26 weeks pregnant and got progressively more comfortable throughout my pregnancy. And have continued to do her work. She has a wonderful program called Restore Your Core that has allowed me to get back to deadlifting and doing jumping jacks and doing jump rope. And so have really physically felt the transformative effects of her work that I didn't experience with doing pelvic floor PT and some other things. Um, and one of the things I think is really amazing about her work is that though her work focuses on the core and pelvic floor, you're really working on everything from your calves, at least up to your shoulders and your neck, probably even beyond. And so I wanted to talk to her about that, about how she learned about these connections, how she integrates that understanding of those connections into her life, so that we can start to integrate them into our lives too. And Lauren, I don't know if you want to say anything more about your background before we get into it, but otherwise, I would love to know how you learned about how all of these body parts are connected.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here talking to you, by the way. And I smiled so big when you said you were back to doing like jumping jacks and jump rope. And I think that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. So yeah, I got into this work. I mean, I've been a long time. I went to college. I went to NYU to be a journalist, and I've always been really curious and insatiable curiosity of like when I learn something, unless I really know it to be true, it's like I just have to keep going and studying and why and why and why and why. And um, and I began teaching yoga at the same time. I kind of just did it as a hobby while I was at college. But then I spent a year traveling around the world and backpacking, and I was like, oh, I can like teach yoga at all these hostels, and I did that, and I realized that storytelling happens in the body too. And like our bodies are just an incredible vehicle. I had been a dancer my whole life, so I had always used my body to tell a story. I had been very comfortable in my body's form of communication more than anything. And so I loved that movement, and yoga at that time was my movement of choice. Just enabled me to have this like really rich experience through like a journey, a story, and then I could work with other people on their stories too. And inevitably, I, you know, I got I had my own big back injury in my 20s. So that got me even more interested in why. Why did this happen? How do I prevent it? I should have had surgery, but my mother, who has seen my father through multiple back surgeries, was like, "You're not having back surgery. I'm coming to nurse you back to health." She's like a really great Jewish mom. So she was like, "No back surgery for you. You're in your early 20s. Like, that's it. I'm coming." And she got on a plane and nursed me back to health. Literally, she's so amazing. And like, I just was like, I feel so in the dark. Like, I was this amazing yoga person. I knew how to use my body so well. I was very flexible, very strong, could contort into all the poses. I was really good. Like, I performed yoga really well. And so, but then when I got injured, I was like, I know so little about my body's patterns. And and it became abundantly clear to me that the way things worked in the body was through patterns. Like it just felt right to me. It just felt like it made sense. I could just see like that my feet, like when I turned my feet this way, my knees went that way and my hips went that way. And it made sense that if I always turn my feet out this way, my knees are always out that way and so are my hips. And that affects my pelvis. Like I could feel it in my body because I was always in my body. And if like I do this to my pelvis, then my spine does that. And if my spine does that, then my ribs do that. And if my ribs do that, then my shoulders do this. Like I could see it. It wasn't like I had to learn it on a whiteboard. I felt this truth. And so when I got injured, I felt so in the dark about why this had happened to me and what my patterns were. And I just felt so let down by the experience. I did not have surgery. I did heal. It was a year-long process of healing. And I just learned so much, and I kind of dove in headfirst into anatomy and biomechanics. And so I just studied voraciously the body from many different lenses. I went the somatic route. I went the anatomic route. I literally took college anatomy. I mean, I got into Columbia School of like neuroscience. I applied for a master's at Columbia. Like I wanted to know, I didn't go. I wanted to know everything there was to know about the body. And everything I learned, because my lens was, this has to all be connected, everything I learned verified that. I mean, when you actually study the body, it's that apparent. It's that obvious. And so when I started working one-on-one with people, I moved to New York City. I was like 11 months pregnant. And I had a baby and just started working again, like teaching yoga at the YMCA. And I would get these like one-on-one clients. And a lot of the people coming to me were also having babies and had all these different presentations in their core, pelvic floor, and body. And so again, it just started making sense to me of like, I just developed this method. I was like, let me take people through this journey where we're kind of just like rewiring things or repatterning things in the whole chain, not just in their pelvic floor and core. And it worked. Like I was just having great results with my clients. And then in 2015, I put the whole method online. That's how you did it. So yeah, I would say like it came from a lot of inquiry and like personal experience, inquiry, and then like just study.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because, like I said, I don't feel like a lot of other people have put it, I don't think anyone else has put it together in the same way, but I don't think that a lot of other people who are working in pelvic health have really as expansive of a view of what the forces are that are acting on the pelvic floor. Um, Let me see here. I'm trying to think which direction. There are so many directions I want to go. Oh yeah, I think maybe just to help orient people, like, can you describe like why and how what's happening in my calves
Yeah.
causes issues in the pelvis and the shoulders and like all of these parts that you don't feel like are directly connected or your jaw?
Yeah. So, do you know those toys? I think they still make them. I'm sure they do. It was like my favorite toy growing up, and my kids played with them. They're like a squishy water toy, like a water in a wrapping with all these little plastic bingabombs in. And when you squeeze one end of the toy, all the water sloshes to one side. I mean, it's literally physics for babies. And so it's phenomenal. I love it. Our core canister, which goes from like the pelvic floor at the bottom up to the diaphragm. And people don't realize this, but the diaphragm, which is your muscle of breath, is so high up in your ribcage that your heart sits on top of it. People are like, yeah, breathe into your diaphragm, and they're touching their belly. I'm like, that's not where your diaphragm is. So that's interesting. Your diaphragm's really high up. And so the core canister, which goes like, again, from like, think about, like, I would say goes up all the way up to your mouth, actually. But like that whole thing is like that water toy. And the job of our arms and legs are to bring us out into the world and to bring the world into us. But the job of our core canister is to manage and mitigate pressure. And pressure happens with every breath you take. The reason you're alive is because you can change pressure in your thoracic cavity and inhale. If you couldn't do that, you'd be on a ventilator. So like the basic thing we do a million times a day, not a million, but many, is change pressure in our body. Inhale, exhale. Pressure, volume, back to physics. Pressure, volume, pressure, volume. But that pressure, volume doesn't just stay in your rib cage and it doesn't just stay in your lungs. It moves through that whole core canister. Your pelvic floor gets the result of it. Your ribs get the result of it. Your core gets the result of it. So there's this interplay. There's this constant pressure management system that is the core, the pelvic floor, the breathing, the spine. But they don't work on their own either, because like if I go to reach, like I'm on an airplane and I want to reach and pull the suitcase down, reaching up changes the pressure in my core. That has to, right? Like just moving my arm away from my body changes that pressure. Moving my leg away from my body, kicking a soccer ball, or stepping up to something, or bending over to pick up dog poo in the morning, thinking about all the activities I do. I don't kick balls. I don't kick any balls actually, but I always get into trouble with my mouth though. But anyway, the activities we do all day long are affecting that pressure, right? Like nothing exists in isolation. So, and now add to it that our body adapts beautifully to what we do all day long. So if I sit all day long, my body's like, oh, Lauren, you want to sit? Let me just rearrange muscle fibers to make it easier for you so you can expend less energy, because what our body really cares about is the least amount of energy expended possible. And then, oh, you want to wear high-heeled shoes all the time? Great. We're just going to like change the tension in your calves, which is going to make your calves adapted to shoe wearing so that your pelvis can get upright, so that you don't fall flat on your face when you put those heels on. We'll just keep adjusting and changing your muscle tone, and so you can, and then your pressure, right? And all of that is kind of like this very quick, or not so quick, but like this very subconscious coordinating activity that is well beyond your control. Like you don't tell your body, like you don't tell your calves what to do when your shoes get on your feet. Your body makes all these quick snap adjustments for you to keep you safe and to keep you doing what you're doing all the time. It's very intelligent. And so that's kind of like when we're looking at optimizing the core and pelvic floor, or understanding the core and pelvic floor, we have to understand that like it's not this like there's not this vacuum sealed part of your body called the core and pelvic floor that just it's not like your heart, which doesn't do this either, but your heart just beats all the time, right? Hopefully, like it's just doing it, like, and it's like it's not self-contained at all. Your heart is very much not. I mean, your heart is also beating blood out, down into your baby toes, but it just kind of is doing its thing there, right? Your core and pelvic floor is a lot more mechanistically central to like the center of your body. Like it's just like constantly in relationship to arms, leg, movement, pressure. It's changing constantly. It's constantly shifting and changing and adjusting. I mean, so is your heart too, as you know, as a doctor. But so that was a bad analogy probably, but there are parts of our body that like are a little bit more kind of isolated, like doing their job, not as needed in coordination with everything else. The core and pelvic floor is not that. The core and pelvic floor is 100% like dependent on and responsible for all these other parts of our body. It's so cool. I mean, it's just so incredible the way it happens. Did that help? Did I complicate things?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I get what you mean about the heart, that it's adjusting and it's responding as far as kind of the intensity of activity, but like mostly if you're just doing your regular stuff, it's kind of the do divides and just
Yeah.
um but yeah, I think another thing I was really curious about, because I know I had a lot of misconceptions about what like the good things to do for my pelvic floor were. I know like I had some trouble with my SI joint for a long time. I mean like for sure before I had kids even I was having
Mm-hmm.
trouble with it. And people kept being like, oh, you just have to stretch your hamstrings and do pigeon pose. And so I was doing so much like figure four stretching and pigeon pose, and then learned in One Strong Mama of like, oh, that might be making things so much worse. And so I was wondering what things you see people kind of doing that they think are helping, and then you're like, oh, that might not be
Yeah.
as good as you think.
Well, I think that we live in a culture that really prizes fit over function.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things like that. Like even wearing compression, like wearing Spanx and compression garments, or postpartum, people immediately slap on a compressive garment,
Mm.
because this idea of smaller, flatter, better. And it's like, well, no, smaller and flatter is prized, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better for you. So I think that like holding your belly in tight all of the time is definitely a a problem. It's going to help you look like you have a flat belly for sure, but it's that amount of tension is going somewhere. So if you go back to that squish toy, if I were just to kind of squeeze the middle, then all the pressure goes down to the bottom. And the thing about the pelvic floor is that it's so deeply tied to our nervous system as well. And it is a wonderful aid and abet. And so when there is cause and reason to grip, we're really good at doing it in our hands, right? We can just grip really easily. We can grip really easily in our jaw, and we can grip really easily in our pelvic floor. Like those are common places that can squeeze and tighten. And the nervous system really appreciates squeeze and tighten because it's a useful false sense of stability. And I call it useful because I think our nervous system is always trying to keep us safe. So it's finding mechanisms of doing so, whether it's actually good for us or not. And so gripping and tightening and tensing is like a default pattern that the nervous system will do. So when you flatten your belly and you hold it in tight all the time, and all that pressure comes down onto the pelvic floor responds by gripping and tightening and tensing. Because it's all this pressure, and the pelvic floor is like, that's a lot. Like it's trying to resist that pressure and find stability. So we end up in a gripped state. And then the pelvic floor becomes very, very tight and tense. And that can show up even as incontinence. So oftentimes people who have incontinence, it is, the issue is not that the pelvic floor is, like the muscles are not like weak, or I should say lacking tone. And it's not that the pelvic floor needs more tone, it's that there's usually too much tone in the form of gripping. And so the weakness there wouldn't be that it's too strong. People are always like, my pelvic floor is too strong. And I'm like, well, strong to me would imply that it's doing its job. So you mean probably that it's high tone, the muscles have high tone, that would be like a form of a weakness. I don't love the word weak and strong. Personally, I find it to be a little judgy, but just to be kind of descriptive about what's happening. And so I would say like tightening your belly in all the time is not very advantageous. I would also say that Kegels, there's this like Instagram account. She's adorable. I love her. But the only thing she does is she's like, okay, everybody, have you seen her? Stop
No, I
what
don't. I'm
you're
not on
doing. And
Instagram
every
anymore,
video is
so
the same. And she's usually lying on the couch and she's like, stop. I think she's a PT. And she's like, let's do it together. And she walks you through like 3 rounds of Kegels. And each video gets like 10,000 likes and comments, and people are like, thank you, because they stop, they see it, they're scrolling, then they stop, they see her, they're like, oh, Kegel reminder, here, I'll just stop. And it's brilliant. Her account is brilliant in that sense. Like it's the cue, right? You need a cue, you need a reminder, there you go, she's going to give it to you. However, the reality is that like it is a major false equivalency. It's like a major logical fallacy that like stopping and just doing 30 Kegels is going to do anything profoundly amazing for your pelvic floor. That's just not how the pelvic floor works. And that is like a very outdated, I would even consider it a patriarchal construct. So I would say like Kegels, holding your belly in all the time, like those are not very healthy for your pelvic floor and core.
because the Kegels pretty much they like if you have a low tone pelvic floor, they might help to increase the tone in some particular muscles in the pelvic floor. But if you already have a high tone pelvic floor, then it's just like, let's aggravate things a little bit. Or like,
Yeah,
does
but
it
even
kind of
let's say I
further
have
increase
low
it there?
tone in my hand. It's easy to understand this when we talk about things we can see. Let's say I have low tone in my hand. What's going to be better, sitting around gripping it or actually like picking something, like using it functionally, like holding, like sitting around gripping your hands isn't going to make it stronger at all. So if something is low tone, just tightening it that's what I mean about the logical fallacy. Like
Yeah.
just tightening something doesn't actually equate or lead to strengthening that body part,
Mm-hmm.
because the pelvic floor, it does not work in isolation. It's just not what it does ever, ever,
Hmm.
ever. So why are we tightening it in isolation? You're not actually using it in the way, you're not training it to task. So
Hmm.
even if you have low tone pelvic floor, I don't really recommend Kegels. The only time I recommend Kegels are for like a proprioceptive somatic mapping experience. So somebody who's like just can't really feel their pelvic, like just really struggling to connect to it, then Kegels can be fantastic as a way to like bring your awareness to your pelvic floor. And even for that, I have better tools that I use, but it is a great entry to that. And then in that case, I wouldn't call it a Kegel, because to me, a Kegel is something you do to actually strengthen the pelvic floor. So I think that like pelvic floor contractions can be useful in very specific scenarios for very specific things, none of them having to do with function, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had to unlearn some like belly tightening, and I think some of it is aesthetic. Some of it is just like stress, right? Of like not realizing that that's a pattern that you go into when you're stressed of like, oh, and then
Yeah.
but like what I really what really kind of hits home for me with that of like noticing the shape that a belly is naturally supposed to be is looking at kids. Because like most kids are pretty slim, right? But they all have, just like a little, a little outward bulge of their belly. And so you kind of, or like same um, if you're, I don't know, I lived in Africa for a while in Tanzania, and like a lot, I feel like the culture there isn't such of a suck it in kind of culture, but everyone's very fit. And so, but yeah, you still see even on like hunter gatherer people that they do have just that little bulge to their belly, which totally makes sense, right? There's a liver there and and your kidneys and your intestines and a lot of stuff that takes up room.
Totally. I mean, we really allowed culture to set the tone for function, which is very sad.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that you see that even in places that should know better, like the healthcare system, right? That like that there are so many cultural things, cultural ideals that drive how the system functions, both within our bodies and within
Totally.
how the systems work. Yeah.
Yeah. Agree.
Um, so what does like a pelvic floor friendly lifestyle look like in real life?
Hmm. I mean, that's a great question. We, I mean, there's definitely a whole movement of trying to get people back to like be more hunter gatherers.
Mhm.
I don't ascribe to that necessarily, because we live in a modern world, but I think there's like some things you can do different. One of them is moving more and moving in various ways. Like this is the first actually podcast interview I've ever done sitting on a couch. Like I'm usually actually sitting on my floor doing my interviews, but it's kind of cold in Miami today and the floor is tile, and I was like, I just want to be warm and cozy. So I'm gonna not sit on my floor for right now. I guess I could have gotten blankets together. I was just whatever. I was like, I'm gonna throw myself right here. But like just a variety, moving in a variety of ways. So if you always like, I walk my dog every morning for a few miles, and I try to sit on the floor to put my shoes on. Seems so stupid and basic, but like, it's not, because when you sit in a couch all the time to do things, you actually are moving in a much more narrow scope. So widening your scope even for like just basic activities is super helpful. So walking, and I'm a huge proponent of walking, and I try to walk a few miles every day. And I have a dog, so it helps, and I live in Miami, so it ultra helps. And and because I live in Miami where it's flat, I actually go to a gym like 4 days a week just to walk uphill treadmill, because we're big hikers. So like it's the variety too. I'm like, Lauren, you're always walking on flat. So I go to the treadmill and I walk incline. It's the only way to get hill It's the only way to get hill. So I go to the gym and I walk incline regularly. If you sit at a desk all day long, that's fine. But my daughter just started actually one of her first jobs, my oldest daughter, and she was like, "Mommy, they offered me like a sit to stand desk. Should I take it?" And I was like, "Yes, that's a great idea." So she's been like standing a lot more for work, and she's like, "It kind of hurts to stand all day." I was like, "Well, you don't need to stand all day. Like, stand for a while, go sit, go take a water break, go to the bathroom." Like, I think that we get stuck in these very like strict, rigid way of thinking. It's about variety, like vary up your how you do things. And then shoes. I'm a really big fan of barefoot style shoes. So shoes that don't really have a heel and aren't shoes that are quite wide because feet need to be wide, and shoes that are more flexible because feet like movement and feet benefit from movement. I would say those are like, and then like non super constrictive clothing, right? Like all of like, and depending on breast size, like I can go bra free because I have small breasts, and I don't tell everybody what to do with their bodies. But if you are wearing bras, there are definitely some bras that are much more restrictive than others. And like bras really, really limit mobility. And I was really excited because my daughter, the same one who's in Boston, she texted me the other day and she was like, "Mom, you're going to be so proud of me. I just returned 3 pairs of jeans because they all squeezed my vagina and I cannot handle squeezed vaginas anymore." And I was like, "Yay!" I was so proud of her, and she was like, "How? I don't know how I could have ever worn tight jeans." I was like, no, but so like just like little basic things like just starting, because I think when you start to think about those things, it makes you question a lot of things, right? Like thinking about like, wow, this doesn't feel good on my vagina. Oh, this actually doesn't feel, I mean, realistically, it's called the vulva, but I didn't correct my daughter in that moment. This doesn't feel good on my vulva. Oh, this doesn't feel good on my belly. Oh, these pants feel really tight. Like starting to notice like how so much of modern lifestyle actually constricts us rather than leads to like freedom of, and because the pelvic floor, again, pressure, we want to minimize, we want our bodies to like be as like back to its original way of moving as possible,
Mm,
I would say.
yeah. Yeah, the shoes have been kind of my one of my big ones for my daughters of really trying to stick with the minimalist shoes. I think both because they're way more comfortable, but also I have this idea, like for me at least when I switched, now it's really hard to go back, right? And so it's like my hope is sort of the same of like if you're always wearing shoes that are reasonably healthy for your feet, that then when you go to unhealthy shoes, that you're just gonna be like, oh. Um,
How old are your daughters?
they're 10 and 6.
Yeah,
So,
that's an easier age to be able to do that with.
yeah.
I
And
lost,
it's
they hit a certain age and they're like, Mom, no.
yeah, it's getting harder already. Like,
Yeah,
I feel like my oldest daughter, just like the sensations of things are really important to her. And like, so if things are uncomfortable,
yeah.
she's just like, no, thank you. But my younger daughter is like, she's had strong opinions about her clothes, honest to God, since she was like 18 months old. And so like, she saw some black, sparkly high heel boots and was just like,
Oh, yeah.
I gotta have them. The
Yeah,
fashion is very important. And so, and so I think there's kind of a bit of like give and take with that, right? Of like sometimes you have to let them.
100%.
My hope, I ended up getting them for her, but my hope was like, oh, she's gonna try these on and then be like, these are uncomfortable. I hate them. And then she was like, no, they're fine, Mom. What's the big deal? And I was
Totally.
just like,
Totally. And they'll figure it out
but
later. Like again, I'm watching
yeah,
my oldest is 19 and watching her figure it out. And she's the one with the like, I won't wear tight vagina jeans anymore. And like watching them figure it out is beautiful. Like
yeah.
you're demonstrating to them all the time, and that's what matters.
Hmm.
I also think that like walking around your house barefoot, like one of my other daughters was at a friend's house the other day. She was like, yeah, it was kind of weird. Like they don't take their shoes off there. And I was like, oh, you know, I try not to judge other people at all. So I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, yeah, it just felt weird. Like, homes should be barefoot. And I was like, yes, I think so. Like, again, A, because of like the dirt factor, but B, because like feet do really well when they're barefoot. So for me, I take pride in the fact that my kids are like barefoot all the time. But then when they get into shoes, it's definitely not the shoes I would choose, but let them do themselves. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think that it's always this tension between kind of the self-expression and adornment and those kind of things. Like
100%.
there aren't that many barefoot shoes that look super cute, right?
None. There are not many. And
But
I'm at a point in my life where I don't really care, but they care,
yeah,
and that matters to me that they feel comfortable.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I could talk barefoot shoes all day, but I don't know that other people want to follow me down that road. Um, because I love them for everything. I haven't gotten my feet strong enough to run with them yet, but um,
So I wear ultras for like walking, and I don't run, but for walking my dog in the morning, I don't wear my barefoot shoes. I
mhm,
wear Ultra, which I feel like is a great functional shoe. So like
mhm,
I don't think Ultra are going to ruin your feet. They're just not barefoot. But again, I'm barefoot 99% of my day.
mhm.
But for walking on pavement, barefoot shoes, like we're not designed to walk on pavement. So barefoot shoes are great, but they're, for me, way too minimal. Like I need a little bit of cushion in there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I run in our ultras. And
Yeah,
it took a little while to kind of for my calves to sort of adjust to that.
yeah,
The but yeah, the
totally.
no padding running on pavement, like
No,
it was just
no,
making things way worse.
yeah.
I was going to ask you a little bit about this because I feel like you've talked about this before. As far as walking, is that like actually like every step like a little bit of a psoas muscle release? Is that kind of a
I don't know if it's
an accurate way of
that's
understanding it?
an interesting question. I've never heard that question. I would say, well, I would say that when you are in hip extension, so walking, you have your front leg and your back leg. So as you move into your back leg, as your front leg becomes your back leg, as you take that swing through, or you the push off and then right before the swing through, you have to do what's called hip extension to get there. And that hip extension, in order to get that adequate amount of hip extension, your psoas needs to give, lengthen,
Mhm.
in order for that to happen. And then on the swing through, I guess you could say it's a psoas release, but it's quick.
It's
I
so
would
mini.
define
Yeah.
I would define walking more as like a dynamic, like much more as like there's definitely like the moment where there's like a moment of balance, there's a moment of push off, there's a moment of swing. Like it's very dynamic, but it's also very kind of, it's hard to say that every person walking always will, their psoas is in a state of relax as they get that swing through. I don't,
Mhm.
and I don't
Yeah.
know that it's necessarily needed because again, as your leg then comes through, your psoas has to, like hip flexion, which is your leg coming forward, is a psoas action too.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes sense.
So there's a
Yeah,
lot going on.
um I think of it as sort of like a good like way to de-sit your body, but
Oh,
like yeah, it's
amazing.
more of the
It's an
dynamism
amazing,
of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's an amazing form of movement and it's wonderful for the psoas. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like, and I guess in that way we could call it a psoas release. But a lot of people are walking in a seated position still, right? They get up to
Mm,
stand and their body is still kind of adjusted to seated. So even though they're standing, they're not actually like they're standing with tension. And
mm,
then walking then could, because they have that tension, then they end up using their low back a lot. That's why people sometimes get a lot of low back pain during walking
mm.
because they don't have that elasticity of the psoas. So then their low back overworks.
Mm. Is that kind of like when you're going into like I feel like I'm not giving the right, but like sort of that, I always get backwards on which one is an anterior pelvic
Yeah.
tilt, posterior, but like when you're tucked under.
Yeah.
Um,
When you're tucked
yeah.
under, that's a posterior pelvic tilt.
Okay.
Tucked under.
And and that's kind of what you're talking about carrying that seated position
Actually,
for your
it's more
or
anterior because when you're
oh, okay.
sitting, think about it, when you're sitting, your hips are flexed, right? They're in that L shape.
Uh-huh.
So this is like hip flexion. And so if I want to create, if I come up to stand
Oh, yeah, I see
and
what
I
you're
want to create hip flexion, I have to, this is how I get it.
saying.
But if my legs are straight, if my legs are now straight, my pelvis is the one. So when I'm sitting, my pelvis is straight and my legs are bent. But when I'm standing, the opposite is true. The legs become straight and then the pelvis rotates forward anteriorly to create that hip flexion still. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you have the kind of the ribs and everything kind of going. Yeah.
Forward and
I'm just trying to like follow the chain up.
yeah, it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So then what ends up happening is because someone is still as if with their ass behind, like, nobody's gonna walk like this, right? Like with their butt behind them and their hips flexed.
Mhm.
So they straighten their legs, their pelvis tips forward, their spine rounds to accommodate it, and then their ribs move forward and up to accommodate that. It's like this domino effect all the way up. It's really fun. I love watching how people move. I had a client come in. She actually flew down to visit me a few weeks ago. She wanted me to assess her walking pattern. And it was just so fascinating and fun. And just to see how people walk and what happens because their life patterns. And she was somebody who had been through a lot of trauma as a child. And so our nervous systems are brilliant and we have these coping mechanisms, and her coping mechanism had been to like really lock down her upper body for protection.
Mhm.
And so when she walked, there was no upper body, like she was just like, her arms didn't swing, her ribs didn't rotate. As a result, she got very little hip movement either. I mean, if you have, in order, very little. And so her walk was almost like a geisha walk, like very, very protected and rigid. And, getting her, I was having her sashay, like, I was like, I want you to sashay, like be on a run, like a catwalk, a runway. And it was really hard. It took us like an hour for her to give permission to her body to catwalk.
Mm.
She was like, I feel so wrong. It almost feels shameful to walk like this.
Mm.
Even though it was like, we're in my own studio, nobody's looking, nobody's around. She was so patterned to really restrict.
Yeah.
So changing body patterns are often also about changing patterns of protection and coping in our nervous system.
Mm.
So much to do with it.
Well, you just did my segue for me, I think, Lauren. I was just about to ask you about like how the nervous system, how our breathing, like how these other systems are influencing what is going on in the core and the pelvic floor. So,
I love talking about the nervous system. It's like I walk my dog every morning and I have to walk her very early and it's pitch black dark. I walk her like at 4:45 or 5. And I live in Miami, so it's a big city, and there's just like a lot of things you have to look out for. And I walk with pepper spray, so all of that is information to my nervous system. Like I know I have pepper spray, which automatically is like, you're not that safe, But then on the other hand, because I've been walking her like this for years, my brain has a very clear map of every tree and outline and shape on my path. And I walk her for like 2.5 miles. I go far, but like I've almost memorized the path in my brain and my nervous system. So, and a few weeks ago, as I was walking from like 2 blocks away, I could see suddenly my brain alerted me that a shadow there was not a shadow was familiar with. That's what our nervous system is doing. It's constantly scanning for you. So first it's creating an imprint, like a blueprint. And then it's scanning to like keep you in that blueprint. And then it's deciding what you do about it, right? So like, what was I going to do about this shadow? And my own personal choice was to take a hard right. I was like, I don't know what that is. Normally I can tell when it's another person and their dog, but this did not, I wasn't happy with the shadow. So I just turned. But what caught my attention was that like everything is shadowed as I walk, but every shadow is a shadow I'm familiar with.
mm.
And how our brains can predict that's a palm tree, that's a car. I mean, it's dark, but yet my brain is, again, because it's basing a lot of it on the predictive model, what we already know to be true, and what we've done a million times before, which is partially based on what we know to be true. And so, you know, our nervous system is always working and scanning and determining and figuring it out. And sometimes it's wrong. Like that shadow could have been like, I don't know, my daughter. Like it could have been nothing. It could have actually been like, actually not even a shadow, just like my brain seeing something that wasn't there. So like the nervous system is not always necessarily right, but what it is always doing is keeping you safe and protecting you in some way. And one of the systems that it is strongly wired to respond to is your core. That is like fight or flight, like safety, like our core system stiffens in response to safety, and stiffens or yields, gives, like, you know, allows us passage or not, literally, like literally allows passage or not. And so I think that, you know, the connection between, I think we're so used to living up in our head and not in our bodies. And we're so used to thinking that like everything we think and do is from a place of thinking, but that's all nervous system. And the way that your body gets that information is actually through skin and perception and sensory organs. And as biological beings, millions of years ago, before we were thinking beings, we were actually feeling beings. And in the embryo, the brain and the skin come out of the exact same place. So it is fascinating that like we are literally feeling beings, but yet we get through so much by relying on thinking things. But like, so the feeling is the things of being feeling like is always happening underneath. And we have to just like take into account that our nervous system is like, is determining and predicating and preparing and just like, you know, and you can change your nervous system patterns too. You can change it. Like your nervous system. I work with a lot of clients with pain that is so chronic that they can't do anything without getting a flare up, but that's all your nervous system. So like you can rewire and repattern your nervous system. People think chronic pain is like, you know, you're not strong enough, or no, it's your wiring, it's capacity and tolerance. So you can change capacity and tolerance, but you need to work within the nervous system. And again, I think that like because again, our core system is like the primal place of like reaction and digestion and just, you know, tense. We react very strongly. Well, why do they call it a gut reaction? That's your core. So that's the connection. I mean, I could talk for 3 more hours about the connection between the nervous system and the pelvic floor, but I mean, I think that like just understanding that like, and like if you walk into a porta potty, I use this example all the time. You're not going to walk in and be like, yum, yeah, or you're not going to walk in and be like, wait, no, I don't want to be smelling that. So I'm going to shut down this, and this. Your brain actually does it really quickly for you. You don't think about it. You like literally get your shit done. You walk into the porta potty, you hold your breath, your brain makes all these snap reactions and judgments for you, but yet you can still urinate. How do you, like, go figure, you're in the most repugnant place on the planet, and yet you can, what is urination? It is literally, you have to be relaxed to urinate. So your nervous system has all these coping mechanisms. If shit stinks in your life, no offense, and I'm sorry for cursing, but okay. If things stink in your life, your brain doesn't consult you. It makes this quick events. It like quick, it figures it out without consulting Amy, right? It just does it. And so like our core patterning literally is, again, has been determined by experiences that we've been through, that our nervous system have adapted to, coped with, you know, all of that. If we had a childhood that stunk, we coped in our bodies, and our nervous system made sure that we didn't have to overly feel that tension, like try to mitigate the stress for us. But that's being held in the nervous system. Like, those patterns are still being held in the nervous system. It drives me crazy when people are like, stress is held in your hips. I'm like, no, there's not a one body part that actually holds stress. It's the nervous system that holds patterns. Muscles and joints, like, are just reacting to patterns. They're just patterns. But the place that's holding the memory is the nervous system.
Mm.
Did that
Yeah,
help?
I think so many of us think of sort of like the nervous system sending messages and the rest
Yeah.
of the body receiving the messages, and not like that kind of continuous interchange. I did like a really kind of geeked out on the gut microbiome for a while, and like I feel like like when you look at those kind of things, it's just like it's pretty much impossible even to separate, like, okay, what part of this is the nervous system and what part of this is the gut and what part of this is the hormones. And it's like you can't really do that. It's
No,
all
no. They're all
yeah.
playing together
Yeah.
and they're all informing each other of what's next and what's to come and what's safe and what's not safe and where's their flow and where's there no flow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so many people also have this misconception that chronic pain is just like prolonged acute pain.
Right.
And so that like if I have this chronic pain, I shouldn't move in a way that I feel that pain or I might injure myself worse. Or and it's much, I don't know if complex is the right word for it, but it's a totally different entity, right? It's like
Yeah.
I think that when they researched it, like the part of the brain that fires up with chronic pain is much closer to where you experience physical sensations of emotions than it is to where you experience acute pain, which I did not learn in medical school and was fascinated to learn when I found that out. But
Yeah. Pain science is one of my favorite topics. And it is completely, as you said, complex. That was the right word. It is really complex how this happens. Because, like you said, when something hurts, people try to. So if every time I bend over, I feel pain, what I'm naturally going to do is stop bending over because, or tell the story that bending over is bad for me.
mm,
And when I do both of those things, when I stop bending over and I make the conclusion that bending over is bad for me, I completely rewire what my brain perceives to be safe.
mm,
And so every time I bend over, I can expect pain, actually. And that's not how you build capacity and tolerance. And it's how you narrow your world. So I work with so many people whose worlds just get more and more and more and more narrow, which, no judgment. It makes perfect sense why. I get it. If something always hurts, you're not going to want to do that. The truth is that there's no evidence that doing that thing causes tissue damage.
mm.
Your brain is tricking you into thinking that it's causing damage, but you're probably not doing tissue damage by moving through it. So I had back surgery a few years ago. So that back injury that I had in my 20s came back in my 40s, and I couldn't this time avoid the surgery. It came back because a chiropractic doctor ripped my disc and fragmented it off, and it landed on the nerve, and I was in a wheelchair for 4 months and blah, blah, blah. Like, no amount of waiting for the disc to absorb, which normally it does, was working. And so for 4 months, I was like, again, in a wheelchair. It was terrible, and I had surgery. And I knew, because I'm in this field for so many years, that one of the very first things I needed to do as soon as I could was start introducing movement and load. And I also lift weights. You and I were talking about that before. I also lift weights. And at the very beginning, like even putting like 2 10-pound weights on my shoulders and doing a squat, I would feel my back pinch. But I knew that it was not, and most people post spine surgery would be like, stop, red flag alert. But I was like, no, this is not a red flag. This is just sensation. And my rule to myself was, if by 10 reps the pain is worse, I'll stop. But if the pain is the same or less, I won't stop. So, and then if by 3 sets I'm still in pain. The same, like if nothing's changing by set 3, rep 10, clearly there's an issue. But always, 100%, not 99%, 100% of the time, by set 3, there was no more pain. By set 2, there was no more pain. And by set 1, rep 8, I was no longer feeling the pinch. And so what my brain did with that was that each time I felt the pinch there on out, my brain was like, oh, you're nothing.
Mm.
And that is how you make sure you don't fall into the trap that pain or sensation, I wouldn't even call it pain, that sensation can cause. Unfortunately, sensation can put people who are already on vigilant alert. Like I, being post spine surgery, was on vigilant alert, right? Like I don't, having spent 4 months in a wheelchair, I don't ever want to be there again. Like I just never, ever. So people like me should be vigilant. And people who have spine surgery say to me all the time, they're like, how did you get back to doing weightlifting and all these things? And I'm like, because I didn't listen to the sensation. Like I didn't actually take the sensation that seriously. Like every sensation I felt post-surgery, I investigated whether it was really like something legitimate to listen to or not.
Mm.
And that's the problem. Most of us are not trained enough in pain science to know that most sensation is nothing more than sensation. And if you keep
Mm.
listening to it and buying into it and believing it, it will become pain and it will limit you and it will become a problem. Not because it's damaging your tissues, but because your brain goes from, is this a problem, to this is the problem. That sensation that I felt first was not, this is a problem. It was my brain being like, is this a problem? And I didn't listen to it. And I was like, no, it's not a problem. And it wasn't, because if the pain goes away after 3 more reps, there was no pain. That was just feedback.
Mm.
And feedback can happen for any number of reasons.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And I think especially so because I feel like everyone that I've been interviewing so far, um, this the power of our stories, kind of how our words kind of cast a spell, has come up in every single one, even though it's really disparate areas of interest, right? One is about like kind of herbalism, gardening, our interactions with the earth. One is about like prayer and our ancestors, and one was directly about story. And now with this, it's just um, so fascinating to me to really see in all these different realms just how powerful these stories are
Yeah,
and what
yeah.
these stories create in these different realms. That like that really feels like kind of like what needs to evolve and change in a lot of ways is just like how we respond to the data, how we respond to the sensation, and then like what story comes from that, and whether or not we interrogate that story or just accept that story. That's really
I love that. I
fascinating.
love that way of framing it. It's a great way of framing it. What do we do with the data that we get?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's kind of like interpersonal as well, right? Like I am someone who like I've always had this fear of conflict. And so rather than like confront someone if I'm upset about something, I make up a story about why they did what they did, right? Instead of just being like, hey, that bothered me. Why did you do that? And sometimes the stories I make up are not so, and like it's just so interesting to see, yeah,
Yeah. And how
how
that
we respond
shapes
to this.
your relationship to that person, but how that also shapes your relationship to so many other areas of your life too, probably. Right?
Yeah, that you then kind of like, a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm sure they had a good reason to do this. And then that then shapes your relationship to your own anger as something that is illegitimate or something to ignore. Um,
So true.
yeah. Um, well, I know that you have to head out here pretty soon.
Thank you.
Um, One other thing, and I don't know if this is a question that you can answer, but it's one final thing that I was curious about that I haven't heard you talk about, so I was like, I'm going to ask. How do interactions between people shape our pelvic floor health? Like, and that,
Yeah.
I think that kind of relates to the nervous system, but is not entirely the same. But
I would say it is the same, right? I think that like how we relate to other people has so much to do with how safe we feel.
Mm,
and like also our level of agency. And I
mm,
think that like how safe we feel and our level of agency comes from what we're doing with the data that we're getting, right? To
yeah.
take your metaphor. So I think that like I like to think that every interaction shapes us in some way, right? All of our interactions um and like we're mammals and we co-regulate. Like what mammals do great is co-regulate and seek each other out and seek out validation and love and comfort. I mean, why is social media so hard on people, right? Like why is it so easy to be an a-hole there? And why is it so easy to take it so personally how people
Mm,
treat you on social media, right? Um, and I think that because as humans we are implicitly empathetic to some degree, we are implicitly caring, right? We care what people think of us.
mhm,
And I think that you can't really separate the part from the whole from the human. Like I think that like all of what happens within our bodies is seeking connection, and seeking connection is so much about seeking connection is so biologically driven, and our core and pelvic floor are literally like the ultimate place of connection,
mm,
literally. I have I have this plant out in the front of my house, and I didn't even realize it's one of those house plants that you can't kill. I forget you probably know, like there's a name for them. There are 100 different types of them, but they're the house plant you can't kill. And you snip off a part and put it in water and it roots. Forget the name. But I have like 10 different varieties. And I stuck one of them. I have so many of them. And I always cut them and put them in water, and then they root and I have nowhere to put them. So I have too many of them. And so I put one in my front, and I just noticed like now 6 months later that it like found its way to walk to like literally created a path all along my balcony and is now trailing itself up the wall. And I thought, it's just seeking connection. Like, isn't that incredible how the plant itself is like, it seeks. I didn't even know this plant because for years it's just hung in my home. It didn't hang on to anything, but here it is now, like clinging to the wall like a vine. And I just thought, you just need to create the right conditions or create certain conditions. And nature just seeks connection. Like
mm.
nature seeks connection. Um, it's a beautiful thing to witness and hold. Like we reflect that. And so I think as humans and interactions, like we are like the plant looking for the wall to climb onto. And that inevitably has to have an interface with our core, pelvic floor, and deep nervous system.
Well, that's a beautiful way to kind of sum up a lot of my thesis for my book of what I'm really looking into of those connections kind of within a person and between person and the world around them. And
Yeah.
um yeah, it's so interesting, all of the different ways that yeah, like this thing that seems like it's happening within one person relates to everything else really. So yeah.
Yeah, and think about how humanity has continued to humanize is like through connection. Like this is what we do is and that through connection we formulate thought and ideas. Like we create forward momentum and change, and um, like it's powerful to think about like how much we are really just the universe too. Like it's hard to explain that, but like I can see it. I can see what I'm saying, but it's like yeah, we are just yes, we are all this planet, and this planet is us.
Mhm.
It's easy
Definitely.
to feel separated from your body. It's easy to feel separated from this planet,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's easy to live right here in the head. It's hard to live anywhere else. It's hard to live on the planet. It's hard to live connected to the trees and to the, to the earth, and it's hard to live connected to our bodies. It's hard to live anywhere but in the mind. Alan Watts, do you know who he is?
I don't.
Oh my gosh, he's this incredible philosopher. He's no longer alive, but and he has this amazing show, this amazing kind of talk that he gave. You can find it on Spotify. I can't remember what it's called, but he just goes into this whole way of really describing. He does a great job of describing like how we are the universe, but how we're so sure we're our brains, but how we are the universe. It's a
Mm.
very powerful talk. I
Yeah,
can't remember what it's called.
I'll see if I can track it down. If I can, I'll link it
You can.
in
You
the,
can
yeah,
track it down, but I
yeah,
will. But send me a note, and I will send it to you.
yeah,
I have it
cool.
saved on my phone because it's. I listen to it all the time. It's really beautiful. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful. You hear it once, and you're like, oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I bet that the people who listen to this conversation will definitely be very interested in that. So that would
I
be
hope so.
wonderful.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send it to you. We put it in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I know you have to
I
run
do.
pretty
I
soon.
have a client in
Um,
5 minutes.
but I really appreciate you taking the time and this rich conversation about connection and meaning making and pelvic floors. It's been really a pleasure. So really
Thank
wonderful
you.
to meet you in this way.
You too. Thank you.